Hello everyone, thank you for checking out this panel, How to Create a Role-Playing Game. I started playing role-play games since I was 15 because of that man over there. Introduced me to the world of Dragonlance, and I've not stopped playing since then. When you discover role-playing games and you play them and you fall in love with the worlds you make, sometimes in the back of your mind you're thinking, could I make this adventure shareable to other people? Should I make a system out of it? And back then when I was thinking these type of thoughts, I didn't know where to go to. There was no books about these type of things. There were no videos about these type of things. So it was, in the back of my mind, I just kind of just let that dream go. So I'm hoping that this panel will be a chance for you that if you have those same type of dreams and those same type of goals, you can ask these wonderful creators about how, any advice, any questions you may have. So I guess I'll let them introduce themselves first, if that's okay.
Sure. Hi everybody, my name is Chris O'Neill. I am the chief creator for Granite State Comicon. Made a number of role-playing games in my career. Probably still best known for Cobalt 8 My Baby. But I hope in the long term to be remembered for mazes and the polymorph system. And we'll talk a lot about that as we go through here. So.
Hi, I'm Irene Zielinski. My first RPG came out this summer with 9th level games. It's Scurvy Buggers. It's about pirates. And I also do game development for this guy.
I'm Steve Jackson. I have been role-playing since the very early days of D&D in 76, 75 or 76. I went to metagaming and did development work there, including on a role-playing game called Monsters, which was a spin-off of Tunnels and Trolls. Later, I went off on my own and made different RPGs. The Fantasy Trip and GURPS are the ones you might have heard of.
If I may ask, so you all have these wonderful ideas. How did it go from an idea to publication?
You write many, many words and then you throw most of them away. In between, you try to play them. I mean, playtest is vital with an RPG just as it is with a board game. Whether it's a simulationist RPG and you think you need to get the rules right, or whether it's a dramatic RPG and you have to get the feel right, you have to try it on live people.
I think your first statement, which is you write a lot of words and then you throw them out, is the most important design thing that everyone needs to know. The first thing you're going to write is not going to be good. And then the next thing you're going to write is going to be slightly not as bad. And then the 450th one, maybe that one's pretty okay. But obviously getting a game in front of people is the most important thing with a game. Just like a novel doesn't matter if a novel's good if no one's reading it. Right? If a game isn't being played, is it a good game? Taking an idea to reality, I mean, we can see what people want to talk about, and we can go around a lot of different paths to that. But the biggest one is wanting to see it exist, which is a great time to hand it over to Irene.
Yeah. For me, also it was, oops, a deadline. So my first game, Scurvy Buggers, came about. I was on a panel with Heather from 9th level at PAX Unplugged, and afterwards we were chatting, and she said, "What are you working on?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I have this found family pirate game concept, and I emailed you guys because I wanted to license the polymorph system to do a zine, and maybe I'd kickstart it around when Our Flag Means Death season drops, and that would be kind of cool." And Heather was like, "Yeah, that sounds kind of cool. That sounds like something we'd publish." And I was like, "Yeah, that's why I was thinking polymorph." And she goes, "No." let's try that again. That sounds like something we'd publish. And so we ended up setting up a pitch meeting, and I, went from, so here's the thing I'm kind of working on and, just something to talk about, to, oh, I have now signed a piece of paper and do have to write a book. And it definitely pushed me to actually make the game, so.
All right, so let me ask you this. So all of you have put out really, none of you have stuck to one thing. You keep creating not just sequels to your works, but like very different ideas and very like themes and stories. How do you know that what you're producing is going to work? Like, I know that like, did you know that Kobold was going to be great? Did you know Gru, the card game, would work? Like, how do you know these things?
Steve, you want to take a shot there?
You don't. I have produced more flops than I have hits. But that's part of the process too. I don't know anybody who has done very many games who hasn't done some that in retrospect seem to be waste of time. But at the time you're invested in them, you think you have a good idea, the people who are playing like them, and what makes something click? I don't know. Ineffable factors. It's getting away from RPGs, but to the game of mine that is best known as Munchkin, I can't tell you why that's a hit. I wish I knew what I did right. I have identified some little things and I've tried to do them again. But, like the 650th time might be good enough, or it might not. But I have 2 games uncompleted on the shelf for every one that I've ever released, because sometimes it doesn't seem to be there yet. You don't know. You do your best.
I'm a huge fan of putting things on the shelf. I have it's been really fun this year. I've been working with the tabletop mentorship group, and so I have a young designer who's, every Monday we get together for an hour and we talk about stuff and give him help. And I said to him the other day, he was like, well, what about my next game? And I was like, well, I don't know, like how many games are you working on right now? And then I showed him my slush pile, and he just started laughing. And then I went to the next page, and I went to the next page, and I went to the next page, and he was like, you have like hundreds of ideas here. And it's like, yeah, because all of them you have to work on to see, because you never really know what's going to hit. And I'm a big fan of recombinating, it's not even a word, but so I have a good idea and I work on it for a while and I put it on the shelf, and then I have another idea and work on it for a little while and put it on the shelf, and then it's like, oh, I could do this heist game about birds. That's a good idea. So put that on the shelf. And then later you get another idea and you slay them together and you get a better idea and you get to work on it. I think some of the games that we put out, we were like, this is the one. Everyone's gonna, and that's never the one that everyone's like, oh, that's the game I want. Right? If you put out enough, then people are like, oh, I like that one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is throwing it at the wall to see what sticks, but you have to throw it very carefully or nothing will stick.
I have had a big ol' section of my notebook entitled Games I'm Not Allowed to Think About Until I Finish the Pirate Game that I finally gotten to look at this fall. That was exciting. But honestly, for me, a little bit is, the question, like, how do you know it will work? I don't. I think my favorite ideas, both of mine and of my friends, are the ones that shouldn't work. It's the one where you're like, you're making what? The game that I cannot stop thinking about, talking about, thinking about the next time I'm going to get to play is my friend Jay Dragon's playtest 7-part Pact, which is this sort of Byzantine, almost unplayable thing where it's 7 mini-game solo board games rigged to lose in a trench coat, and you're all wizards and everyone's the GM of their own little wizard domain. And it's all astrology symbols and planets. And like you described this, and this doesn't sound playable, let alone marketable, and yet every single person who's touched it is like, oh, I'm not gonna think about anything other than this game for months. So, I mean, think about your things that you like, and then how many of those things would have been crazy ideas before they did well?
I want to know when I get my next session of Wizard Game. All we played was the setup.
So I'm going to ask kind of a boring question about finances. So a lot of great companies have come and gone. ICE was one of the ones that did very well in the beginning, but due to some mistakes here and there, they went under. TSR, famously, of course, went under. How do you plan things carefully so that you don't accidentally go, bankrupt?
Well, first I'm going to give you Steve Cole's answer because it always makes me smile. Steve Cole is the man behind Amarillo Design Bureau, but he's not the only person behind Amarillo Design Bureau. His wife Leanna also has a great deal to do with it. And what Steve says to a question like that is always, don't approve a business plan unless a woman has signed off on it. But he's not saying that to be woke. He's saying that because he feels that, and he's talking about game companies here, designers fall too much in love with every idea they have, and that you need somebody, in his case, Leanna, to stand back and give the more rational, how many are you assuming you'll sell, and so on, and so on, and so on. But yeah, regardless of the gender of the person doing the checking, the first thing about a business plan is don't do it by yourself, because you have to have somebody to call you on your insanely optimistic assumptions. There was a joke back in the day about online imports. Everybody was coming along with a design and saying, I only have to get 1% of World of Warcraft and I'll be a hit. I'm sorry, children, but getting 1% of World of Warcraft is really, really hard.
It's a very big number.
Yeah.
There's a really famous statement, which is, how do you make $1 million in gaming? And then start with $3 million. Business is business, and the creation of games is not business. And one of the things that happens is a lot of time creators, who are generally tend to be really smart, creative people that are really in love with the product that they're doing, think that that's enough, and it's not, right? In order to be successful as a business, you need to be a successful business person. You need to be a person that understands business and can do those things. The ninth level company that I started, Heather is the smart one, right? I'm just the one that can talk, so I just talk all the time. And then Heather makes decisions as a rational business person. Whereas I'm like, look at this shiny thing, it's so cool, this is gonna be awesome, let's make some more kobold stuff, yeah, stuffed animals. That works, and that's helpful, and you need that drive and that passion and that experience. But being successful financially really requires that you actually be a good business person. There's a kind of a little dirty secret that I don't think a lot of people hear all the time, but like most game stores are passion projects, right? There's a person who's just really excited to sell games. And the ones that are successful in the long term are the ones that have a good business person that also is part of that. And the same thing is super true of making games. Now the nice thing is as designers and as fans and as creators, financial success should be the last thing that you're thinking about. Like when you want to make a game, you should be making a game that you're into, be really excited about that game. If it turns into an opportunity to be a business, that's a different story. And a lot of times, it's about finding the right business partners then to do that, which is a very different situation than being like, hey, in the world of Kickstarter, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to put it out there, I'm going to do that. But being a publisher is a very, very different thing than being a game designer.
Yeah, my response to this question in my brain was just, that's what those guys are for. Like, I like writing games, and I like, you know, working with people who are really good at the business side of things and can take the little rant, you know, and can take the inane rants that I have sent them and turn them into books with pictures and marketing plans and, you know, like, I think that if you're at the point where you're like, how can I create a role-playing game? Yeah, like, don't think about business yet, maybe. And then once you start, ask people who have been around a long time what they're doing and see if they can either point you towards someone to work with or give you tips, because they know a lot and have made a lot of the mistakes that you might run into if you don't ask them.
I will add one more thing to that. I'll even grab the mic to do it. Staying in business is an equation. You've got income and you've got outgo. You will do everything you can to increase your income, but you cannot control it. The part you control is your outgo. Be cheap. Cheaper than that.
I agree. Be cheap. Spend your money on things that are real. Like other role-playing games from other designers that you can put on your shelf. Which is what I spend all my money on. Oh, and action figures.
So, if I may ask, what's been your greatest challenge, and how did you overcome it in role-playing games?
I have a good answer for this one. I never thought that I would make role-playing games. That's not, the fact that it's what I do for a living is constantly I'm always like, huh, 15-year-old me would be very excited. But 20-year-old me would be like, no, that's not a job, you can't do that, that's not how that works. And, but I also always looked at making games as everything has to be perfect. And it's not ready yet, and I can't show anybody, and I can't show anybody until I get this idea right, and I can't share this idea and those people. And because of partnering with good people that eventually were like, hey, 92% is enough. You know, and eventually it's like kind of 85%, maybe like 71% is good enough, get it out there. Right? Getting your first game across the line is literally the hardest thing. And then it gets easier and easier. And there's a thing that I say about all the time, which is that in a lot of ways, gaming feels like music business. And for a lot of people, a lot of bands, their first album's so good. Like, oh man, their first album's so much better than their first album. And then their second album, you're like, But that second album, they had like 6 months to make. And they had their whole life to make that first album. And that's what a lot of people's first game is like, right? Like it's the first thing they spend 5, 6, 7, you know. The number of people that I've talked to at conventions that are like, I've been working on this game for 10 years. And I'm like, that is 9 years too many, you know. You need to put that on the shelf. You need to step away. But understanding getting to that point where you can say, hey, here's this design I have, and I need to get it in front of people, is that hardest part. And you know what? People are going to be like, I don't like it. Or they're going to be like, it's just like this other thing, and you're going to have to take that hit. There's nothing more soul-crushing to me than when I have a really cool idea and I run down the hallway and I'm like, Heather, here's this idea. She's like, no. I'm like, oh, damn it. But it's that jumping over that hurdle, this is what makes something awesome. So.
I get very excited about my ideas and how the systems are gonna all fit together and make my little Pepe Sylvia notebooks of all of my great ideas. And then I have to explain what I'm working on to somebody else, and I'm like, oh, I have to like tack these butterflies to a cardboard and put labels on them and write this in English. And for me, I think, yeah, producing intelligible English word count for other human beings is a struggle. I will let you know when I solve that.
As the one who gets presented with a box of butterflies and tries to keep track of each one as it goes past, yeah, but, you're getting there. I've got two big problems. One of them is I spend too much time being Steve Jackson and not enough time writing the next game. That adds up after a while. The other one, oddly enough, is playtesting. One of the things that COVID killed was local playtesting groups. And we are learning ways to get past that. We're learning really effective ways of doing playtesting online. We're not there yet. It's like at this point, I think we've got a toolbox, but we don't yet have the owner's manual. We're working on it.
How does social media and technology help in the process of creation of role-playing games? Does it have an impact whatsoever?
I don't understand the question.
Oh,
Sorry, I was giving him a hard time. I'm an original gangster. Those things were not around when I started, and they still don't help me as much as they should. I'm trying to learn, but I really want to hand that off to the people who live and die by them.
If anyone doesn't understand how OG Steve is, I own games that Steve made in the late 70s that are just in little plastic baggies. Like in a situation like before it was common to have dice. Right? So.
Before Ziplocs.
Before Ziploc, yeah, not been Ziploc.
They were taped closed.
There's a lot of technology that we use. We make everything, like we do everything in the design, but I don't use any real technology when it comes to designing games, other than an Excel spreadsheet to do some math. And I actually use a thing called OMM. O-M-M. It's a consciousness typewriter. It like plays like really soft music and it turns everything off on your computer. So all you can do is type. Like you literally have to turn the program off to use anything else. I found that very good for writing. From a social media perspective, the hardest thing is not announcing that you have this idea. The moment you have something really cool, you want to talk about it. And talking about it sometimes takes the energy away from working on it. So that for me is actually really hard. I do try to avoid that, but there comes a point where you need to put it out in the world and need to say it so that you can have people say, well, when are you going to have that game?
I think that the social media and the tech are great for the later stages, like the playtesting. It's really, really great to be able to playtest stuff over Discord, and even if you've got weird components. Jay's wizard game lives on Google Slides. It's horrifying, but like that's what works, right? So just being able to use those sorts of tools to be in the same room with people who are far away is really great. And finding people who are in your community, like the social media, not necessarily talking about your thing that you're working on this moment, but finding people who you can talk about design with and how do you approach this problem is really nice. My favorite piece of technology for actually writing text, I swear, is a fountain pen. because those don't have backspace keys, which is actually really great. So there is a fountain pen, the lights are off, there is probably a candle because I feel guilty about the wax burning, and so I have to use that time to make words happen. And it's dark enough that I won't see other things in the room and get distracted, like horse blinders. Longhand fountain pen, cursive, because then I can't quickly scan and make edits, like, just...
Works for you.
Well, also, I think, like, I have the, like, more technophobic initial design approach than Steve, which I think is funny.
It's very funny. I didn't have a typewriter until I was out of undergraduate school. Typewriter was miraculous. A word processor is an unimaginable bounty. I don't care for Word, but it's the best out there anymore. And I push a word processor pretty hard in terms of the various tricks that it will let me do, saving multiple versions, moving things around, and so on and so on. Just give me peace and quiet and Word not misbehaving, and I can be productive.
When I was a little kid, we got a VIC-20. It was the first computer I had. I learned how to type on a VIC-20. And I learned how to type because at the time, the way to get games on your computer was to type them into your computer. And so I got very good at typing, but very good at typing with no capitalization and no punctuation. And so by the time I got to high school and I had to take typing classes, I spent years being beaten by the nuns because I typed wrong. But they couldn't explain why I could type so fast because they had never met the new generation that grew up with a typewriter in their hands. So for me, writing longhand is unbelievably hard. Like every time I use a pen, I'm just like, this is a piece of art that I'm working on. Whereas I can type at blinding speeds. It just is incomprehensible garbage to other humans. So the other tool that I use is a person to edit what I write. That's the other thing.
So we have about 15 minutes or so minutes left. Does anyone would like to ask any questions? Okay.
I can talk pretty loudly if that works. So I haven't yet tried any of these, but I really want to try the solo journaling RPGs that are coming out. Have you played any? Have you written any? Are you excited about any of those?
Have you played 1,000-Year-Old Vampire?
I haven't played any yet, but I want to play them, and I already have ideas for the one that I want to write.
There's a very good, so the question is about a new subgenre of role-playing called journaling games. And basically it's a role-playing game where you are writing the answers down so that you're literally following prompts, and probably there's an oracle is the word that most designers are using. The prompts in the game are giving you opportunities to write the same way that you would talk in character to other players at the table and you're making decisions. So from my perspective, the one that you should look at first is called 1,000-Year-Old Vampire by Tim Hutchins. There's currently a Kickstarter for the follow-up, which is called So You Happen to Have Met a 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, which in the first one, it's the writings of a vampire that has forgotten most of their life. And the new one, it's like you're just a regular person that happens to meet a vampire and all the horrible things that happen to you because you have encountered a 1,000-year-old vampire. There are a number of actually really interesting games in the genre. It's not for me because I don't find writing calming or peaceful or even fun. I'm good at it, but it's work. So for me, I'm always like, no, I want to roll dice and I want to play on the table. So let's see. But there are a couple of good ones. The Beast is another one that's really, really good. A little dark.
It's interesting that you say you find writing work. I'm just raising my eyebrows. There's probably nothing I would rather do.
Yeah, no, I get that all the time. It's funny. There's nothing I would rather do than color pictures in, like in Photoshop. Like that's, I could put on music and color art for hours, and I'm like super happy. Writing, I'm like, I got these good ideas I gotta write down. Goddamn. Now I'll talk all day.
Have you considered playing a journaling game with the tape recorder?
There is one. There's
Yeah.
one that you like.
Oh, it's the NPR one, right? The like sort of you're a public radio person.
No,
You were-
this one.
oh, it's a
like,
different one.
You're on like a spaceship.
Oh, yeah.
That is disabled, and you're like, you know,
Oh,
you're vlogging basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is that one called? It's by
Just reading
is it
about
by
it.
Alex. It's good. There's another one that's like that. That's called Last Time Caller, and it's the apocalypse has happened, and you are the radio DJ that's just trying to keep the thing open, and then the prompts are all people calling into the station, like saying what they're doing, and it's like you just trying to keep the patter going.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it is a neat, subgenre.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
How do you balance story and mechanics in games? Because oftentimes I find that I have all these really interesting things I want to share with people. Story and background and the vibe. But not everybody's going to want to read all that. How do you distill that into something people are interested in wanting to read?
Make it as good as you can for the people who like the kind of thing that you're creating. Nothing's going to appeal to everybody. Play to your strength.
There is no difference between story and mechanics. Like every rule that you're putting in there is part of the story that people are going to experience, right? So like, how can you, if you're like, oh well, there's all these things, and then I have all this, like, are people going to read all this? Use that, like, that flavor that you want to impart like little nuggets of that into every bit of the game. I think Polymorph does awesome with this, where every Polymorph game, those basic things that you're rolling have sort of unique, flavorful names that are just kind of getting you into the spirit of whatever you're supposed to be doing, right? So then there's more text if you want it, but like even those, like no mechanical bit is totally dry and is not related to the story.
I take back half my eye roll. that was, no, you make the case well.
To try to get closer to, I think, what you're trying to get to, are you saying, like, how do you get, you have all of this world building, you have all of this story, and how do I express that in a way to get it to the players without them having to read it? Is that really the heart of your question?
Yeah, kind of. Because I find a lot of times people get really interested in a lot of the ideas I have underlying. And I can sit here and I can tell you for 3 hours and it'll be interesting. But if I put it on a paper, there's a lot of skimming that goes on, or you know, they don't necessarily want to have to read a 3-inch, you know, cover to cover book to get the world.
Right. In order to play this game, I need you to read this novel.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like how do you draw the line between being a novel and being a game? I guess that's where I'm going.
Well,
Is
so the
it
interesting-
possible that you should be writing a novel?
both.
I'm not teasing.
There is a point, and I do agree with Steve, right? There is a point where a novel is the right answer. In fact, I have this game world that it's this game I've been working on for 10 years. Thank you all for getting that joke. But literally, I've been working on this game for 10 years. And there was a point recently where I resurfaced it, and I brought it back, I started working on it. And Heather says to me, she's like, maybe you should just write a novel? Because there is a point where it's like, the thing that is interesting about the game and the world are not necessarily the same thing. So what I've been working on is trying to cut away to get to the most interesting part of the game and use that as a wedge to get to the other part. Right? So I'm a huge believer in the fact that I want to get a game, I want to make it as easy as possible, I want to get people to the table, I want them to get in the action. So in mazes, we have a rule called the door to adventure, right? There's no shopping trip, there's no prep. We don't go through and meet somebody in a tavern. We literally start at the door to adventure. And I came up with that idea from an earlier game, see, you can see my process working here, where you began the game by getting punched in the mouth. So every game started when you were getting punched in the mouth, and it's like, why are you being punched in the mouth? Who is punching me in the mouth, right? Because like in any kind of good writing, the idea is to get as close to the action as possible, right? You watch modern movies, right? And there's a huge amount of world building going on, and none of it is exposition, right? All of it's you're just seeing it. And to me, that's the best. Take to what Irene was saying, where you can make your mechanics and you can make your words, you can make it flavorful, you get that information in there. But get to the part that makes the game interesting, focus on that, and let the world come behind it.
A lot of the games that have the most sort of intricate world building too, like, it's really putting most of that in the hands of the GM. So like there is nothing wrong with having a lot of information in your thing as long as it is seen as like, this is extra stuff you can dig into for fun to put in front of your players and not seen as required reading before you get into it. So as long as like you can get this game, you can buy it and get it in front of your friends that afternoon, you've done it. And then all of the other exploratory stuff is more space for them to play in as they grow with the game. So as long as it's not required to enter, you're good.
And RPG fans love reading.
Oh yeah.
At least the ones that buy books. The people that just play, we don't care about that because they don't give us money. So.
Anyone else?
My man right here.
You then you.
When you're trying to design a role-playing game, how do you decide the main bad guy, where you are, what's gonna happen, basically the storyline and what's gonna.
All right, so you and I are going to design a game right now.
Huh?
You and I are going to design a game right now.
Oh.
So who's the main bad guy? Who's the bad guy? What's something that you think is scary but also kind of cool?
A giant.
A giant, right? We're already halfway there. So now you have a giant. What's scary about a giant? They're huge, and we're little, right? So we're going to start and we're going to say that in our game, we're little and the giants are huge, so they are accidentally going to step on us, and we have to get their attention, right? Now we're halfway there. Now we just got to figure out what's important that we want to do in the game. Do we care? Is it a game about moving around? Do we want to run and hide from the giant? Or is it a game about us trying to make a noise loud enough so the giant notices us? What do you think?
I think it would probably. Actually, I think it would be neither. We're trying to fight the giant.
We're trying to fight them.
Freedom.
For freedom. I love it.
Kind of like when how America claimed our freedom. We're trying to do that, except.
Welcome to New Hampshire. Live free or die giants. By 9th level games. I'll have it for you next weekend. I think you just answered your own question, right? You said, how do you come up with these ideas? How you do is by not being afraid to put them out there. Think about the craziest thing you can think about, and then you just add something more to it. And then if it stops being fun, you throw it out and you start all over again. I mean, that's what we do. I appreciate that question.
Why would I start over though? If I'm like, what if I?
Hey man, I'm dropping gold here. You're dropping gold. I get it.
That's 99.9% through being done to the game, and then I have to start over.
Well, only if you don't like it. If you like it,
When if it keeps being fun, then you get to keep making it. And that's, as you get older, you'll be like, stuff is less fun. I'm sorry.
Does that happen?
I mean, I haven't encountered it, but individual things become less fun.
Oh, you can say it? Okay.
Oh, I have a
the question was, does the game fit the demographic? Is the game designed to fit the demographic, or what was the alternative?
Yeah, so like.
Or do you change your game to meet the demographic?
Yeah.
Ah.
If you were designing a game for like replays like movies characters or cartoon characters, that could have potential gratuitous like cartoon violence.
Oh, now you're talking about language. Gratuitous cartoon violence is like literally what we do.
Like Toon.
Yeah.
Would you want to?
Like Dune? No, you said like Tune.
Yeah,
I
Toon.
thought you said like Dune.
No.
Oh, well, that's.
You know, the Quizage Hadarach hits me in the head with an
Although-
oversized hammer.
Although, yeah, no,
One day, one of us will get you.
yeah, no, I want to do Dune in Toon.
I want to do Toon Dune.
Yeah.
I absolutely want to do Toon Dune.
Manny, now they're ADHD.
So Nice Little Games, if you come by their table, you can see we have a variety of games. And we very specifically take a demographic, a market that we're trying to hit with each game. And part of our reason to etch it is to find underserved markets and say we're going to go after this demographic. So we have a game that's targeted at like a 12-year-old girl that thinks princesses are awesome. And we have a game that is, I really want to punch Star Wars fans that don't get that we're rebels and the government are the bad guys. Like, I want to punch them. Right? So it's, each one of those games, those two games have very diverse markets. Right? I want to be a princess. I mean, we all want to be princesses, but is very different than Nazi punching space fighters. But we also have Scurvy Buggers, which is a game about, you know, pretty gay pirates. And we have a game called Sentai and Sensibility, which is if Jane Austen wrote the Power Rangers. Right? Available right now, $20. That lamp deserves $19.99. So we sat down at the beginning when we have an idea and say, who is this game for? And we write to them. In fact, one of the biggest things that we do, you're talking about changing, that's where we kind of decide how crunchy the game is going to be, because that's a big part of that market. How much extra teaching does the game need? If it's for a market that, it's very simple to sell Mazes, which is a game about going down to the dungeon to fight monsters, because most RPG players understand that. And it's a whole lot different in the Very Good Dogs of Chernobyl to be like, all right, now I'm going to need to explain a little bit about Chernobyl, but not enough that people have to read 3 inches to get what's going on. So, I mean, demographics is a huge part of how we design. And I don't think that's normal.
We don't think a whole lot about demographic at the design stage. I'm not saying none, but not a whole lot. We think we know what our demographic is. It's you guys. It's gaming geeks. The challenge is to look at each thing as it comes out, because they're all a little different, and then explain, well, exactly what makes this thing different. So those of you who are really, really, truly into that will be able to grab it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am thinking a little bit more about it than you are most of the time, I think. But also, I do really like when you have kind of a weird idea, sometimes which demographic it appeals to can be emergent sort of about halfway through, and that can inform the rest of the process. So we're working on a little like anthology box of micro RPGs. I've got it here to play test, and like one of the things we're looking at right now is when we open the box, certain people gravitate to certain games, and I want to know who, right? Like, oh, who wants to play Grandma Club, and I'll be grannies trying to make sure you win the best village, and like there is a sort of person who is like Grandma Club. It turns out it's most people, but you know, like Gritty Reboot really hits with the 80s kids we have found. Like it's
That's my game in this anthology.
So
where you take a childhood, something that was awesome from your childhood, and now you have to destroy it to make a Gritty Reboot.
yeah.
Like Thomas the Tank Engine in a post-apocalyptic hellscape.
Yes.
But this anthology box is an interesting project, and you know what it is was emergent for me too. I haven't been one of the key players in making this happen, but my name's going to be on the outside, and so I have to look at it. And I'm not going to tell you which one, but there's one game in there that I think is just a mistake. And I don't mean that particular iteration of it is a mistake. I mean, I think the whole genre it's based on is a bad idea. But clearly, and yet, as has been pointed out to me forcefully, a lot of people like it, and this is an anthology. And one of the purposes of an anthology is to help you find what it is you like. Well, hot news, folks. Some of you are going to like things that I don't. I think that's allowed.
One of the ways I won this argument too was also, it's the crunchy frog in the chocolate box, and maybe what it tells you is you don't like crunchy frog. Like, but that's data too.
Yeah.
Just talking about this, the emergent experience. So Sentai and Sensibility was a game that we thought was going to be for readers of Jane Austen. We thought it was going to be people that were into Bridgerton, and we were wrong. It is a game that Sentai kids are very excited about. And so we did make some changes late in development to kind of just a little more Sentai, a little less Bridgerton, because it was like, I see that this is an underserved market. People want to color code their armor very much.
Unfortunately, time is up. You can find them at the gaming area over here. We're recording this for reallyDicey.com. I'm not sure when it'll be up, but it'll be up if you want to look at this again. Thank you all very much for coming, and hope your dreams come true. Take care.